Welcome back! I have now owned my Mercedes-Benz EQS 580 sedan for 26 and a half months. And this month, we're going to talk about some things that I promised I would cover when I first bought the car, and that's honest opinions about ownership and driving experience. We're going to talk about the mileage reduction because of cold weather in electric vehicles, specifically those that don't have the heat pump like my 23 model. And we're also going to talk about how depreciation changes your decision-making process when buying an electric vehicle, even more so than a gas car. I'm also going to show you how to schedule your charging sessions for your car at home by telling it when not to charge. And we're also going to cover how to adjust the volume of the navigation voice, both before you start driving and then while you're on the road. But we start, as always, with my monthly mileage update. This month, I went 690 miles. And normally I tell you how much I paid and what my mileage was, but for some reason my wall box charger didn't record from December 16th to January 16th. But what I can tell you is since January 16th, to include last night, which was the 31st, I spent $25 charging my car at home. Speaking of mileage, let me tell you what happened in the middle of this month when we went through a cold snap. The last 2 years I've owned this car, we really haven't had a dark, cold snap where it was really cold in the 20s and teens for any length of time. And so I've seen reduced mileage, but it's never been too much. This month we hit the teens, we hit the 20s, we had a couple ice storm warnings, and my mileage was surprisingly different. As an example, on the 13th of January, when we were in the middle of the cold streak, my car was charged at 78%. My car said I had under 180 mile range. I started driving, I checked the eco options to save energy, and it said I could save 41 miles by letting the car control my climate, and another 13 miles by letting the eco driving take over. On the 16th, just 3 days later, I had only gone 89 miles, but I was already down to 18%. So later that day I was driving, and I said, let me see what my driving savings could be if I let the car do the driving. It said if I let the climate control, it'd be 6 extra miles. If I let the eco do the driving, it would be an extra 4 miles. By contrast, it was 70 degrees yesterday, and when I went to do the same setting, it literally said 0. There was nothing the car could do to make me drive more economically. Now, I will point out right up front that I don't drive this car to be as economical as possible. I let the pre-entry climate control kick on every morning to make sure the car is at the right temperature for me. And I drive it at the temperature I want, and I don't drive fast, but I also don't drive with eco driving on a regular basis. So I'm not driving to be as economical as possible. So I probably could have gotten better mileage in those 3 days because I drive this car for me and not for the mileage. But I do want you to see the vast difference that you can expect if you're driving in winter driving. And I'm sure the folks in the north and in places where it's cold, like Northern Europe, you've seen and you understand the difference in range you get when it gets really cold, because I've never seen it below 10 degrees here in the last several years. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're buying an electric vehicle, cold temperatures will change, although I will say the 24 models have a heat pump on them, and so do the newer vehicles, and that apparently has really improved the range that these cars have and their ability to handle the cold. Now we're going to talk about scheduling your home charging from your car. To schedule a home charging session in a Mercedes, you have to reverse engineer the process. You have to come down to where it says charging pause, and it's going to say this is when you're not going to charge, so you're going to save electrical costs. You add a new. So now you're telling the car when to not charge. So let's say if I'm more economical from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., I'm going to tell the charge to start the pause at 6 a.m. and to end the pause at 10 p.m. So now my car will not charge between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., which means I have now scheduled a charging session that will take me from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And there you have it. If I want to set up more and do it in small increments, all I have to do is tell it when not to charge, and it'll charge in the other times. Next, I'm going to show you how to change the volume of the navigation voice before you start driving and then once you start driving. To adjust the volume of the navigation aid, you hit your home button, you go to settings. Under settings, you go to system, you go to audio, which is a few down from when you start. You go to audio, you go to voice output. Here you see voice guidance volume and general voice output. So if you want her talking louder when you're driving, you turn it.
Please follow the road.
Or you tell it to turn down.
Please follow the road. Please follow the road.
And if you want...
Hello, I'm Mercedes. Hello, I'm Mercedes.
So I say just the voice. Now, if you want driver recommendations while you're driving, you can turn it on. If I'm on a phone call, I don't want the car talking to me, so I have mine turned off. And I have automatic fade out during navigation announcements. So if I'm playing music, it'll quiet down while she's talking. And that's it. Once you set her to a volume you feel comfortable with,
please follow the road.
You are set. Now, let's adjust the volume while we're driving.
Please follow the current lane. Now exit right towards North Carolina.
And if you don't want to hear her talking at all, you simply hit that and you'll never have to hear her talking to you again. Now, I'm going to talk about the part that I really don't enjoy talking about, and that's depreciation. We've had conversations in the chats before, and I've mentioned it a couple times in previous videos, but this month I went ahead and saw what my dealership would offer me for this car if I were to sell it back to them and trade it in for another car. Here's what I discovered. I bought this car for $142,000 26 months ago. At the time, guys were having challenges with their 2022 models and they were having to sell them back to the dealerships, but the cars were so rare and there were no EQS SUVs. Guys were actually being paid $20,000 more than what they paid for the car to turn them into the dealership. And so I anticipated that demand would stay high and that the depreciation would be moderate at the time. Well, as we've all seen in the last 2 years, EV vehicles have flooded the market and people have identified the fact that the infrastructure is not really strong for driving longer distances. And so demand has dropped substantially while the availability of cars has remained high. And as a result, depreciation has absolutely plummeted. And when I had my car evaluated, my dealership said they would only offer me $54,000 for the car that I just spent $142,000 on 2 years ago. So what does that give me a perspective of for future owners and possible owners? If you're thinking about buying any EV, but I'm going to talk specifically about the EQS systems because that's what I have. My strong recommendation is do not buy it the traditional way. When I bought the car, I put 10% down and was going to pay it off over a number of years and figured that at the 3-year mark or so, I'd be about even on the amount I owed versus the value of the car. I traded it in to get something newer, and that's not going to be the case in any way. So here's my recommendation. If you're going to get a car, and these are beautiful cars, highly recommend it. The Hyperscreen is still amazing to me. And every day when I go to work, I turn around and watch my taillights as they shut themselves off. Love this car. But if I were to do this again now, I would lease it for a 2 to 3 year period. I would lean towards 2 years, see how the market is moving, and then make my next decision. I think that makes better sense. It's not as great financially. All those who want to talk about the finances of buying versus leasing, there's that. But unless you're going to buy the car in cash and understand you're going to lose money dramatically, I think leasing would be a good option because you can have the car, watch the market, turn the car in, and then have an option to do something different. So completely different dynamic than when I bought the car, because at the time, buying it standard payments was something I thought was reasonable, and it's no longer that. Finally, I'm going to leave you with a couple fun things. First, I'm going to share with you the digital display that my grandson loves when I start the car up. And then I'm going to finish it off and say goodbye with the New Year's greeting I get from my car. And with that, until we talk again next month, you make it a great day.
Hello, Chief.